Welcome to Our College Your Voices. I'm your host, Kara Monroe. I am excited to have a wonderful panel of guests with me today to talk about Ivy Tech's celebration of the upcoming First Generation College Student Week, which we're going to be celebrating as a college the week of November 9th, 2020. And you're going to hear this episode very close to that time frame. So I've got a great panel. I want to dive in and let you meet them and hear from them. And we've got some great questions to talk about. So first up is Josh Van Bibber. Hi, Josh.
Hi, my name is Josh Van Bibber, and I'm with the TRIO Student Support Services program on the Indianapolis campus. And TRIO, for those who aren't familiar, is a federally funded grant program, and we serve students who are first-generation college students who come from low-income households, and students who have some sort of disabilities as well.
Welcome, Josh, and thanks very much for helping to put this episode together. You get producer credits today, so thank you for that. Next up is Rachel Karcz. Hi, Rachel.
Hi, Kara. I'm Rachel Karcz. I'm the Dean of Art Sciences and Education at the Indianapolis campus. And I work with Josh and a group of other Indianapolis folk on the First Generation Celebration Week.
Excellent. And next up is a student here at Ivy Tech, Manny Martinez. Hi, Manny.
Hi, I'm a first gen student, and I go to Ivy Tech. It's my second year. My major is physics, and I'm in the TRIO program as well as honors and the NINA program as well.
Outstanding. We keep you very busy, it sounds like.
Yes, very busy.
And next up is Danny McQuaid. Hi, Danny.
Hi. As Kara said, my name is Danny McQuaid, and I'm the Director of Student Life for our Kokomo service area. And I am part of a team of Student Life Directors who are working on doing some programming statewide for First Gen Week and celebrating that. So we're really excited this year.
Wonderful. And last but not least is Beth Clemens. Hi, Beth.
Hi, good day. My name is Beth Clemens, and I represent Fort Wayne. I'm the director of the TRIO Student Support Services program on the Fort Wayne campus. We've been in existence for about 15 years, and I'm heading into my 8th year as the director.
Outstanding. Well, welcome to all of you. And as a first-gen student myself, I am very excited for this conversation and to help folks who are listening learn a little bit more about what it means to be first-gen, how we serve first-gen students at Ivy Tech, and how others can get involved. So let's dive into the questions. So first of all, we all know what it means to be a first-generation student, but what is the meaning for somebody who maybe hasn't heard that term or isn't sure what it means? What is a first-gen student?
I think first-gen student kind of depends on who you ask. There are a couple different definitions that get floated around, and the definition we use in TRIO programs is a little bit different than the definition that is on the federal application for student aid as well. So TRIO, we generally look at first-generation students as a student who is the first in their family to pursue a degree, meaning that neither of their parents or guardians has earned a bachelor's degree by the time they turn 18, which is a little bit different than the FAFSA would just ask if the parent has earned a degree.
I'll throw myself in as an example there if I can. My parents are both Ivy Tech graduates, so I was first generation going to college because they only earned associate degrees, which is not to put down the associate degree at all, but just to say the federal definition that TRIO uses measures it by the parental attainment of the bachelor's degree.
There are a lot of other nuances to the word. I can't remember the range, but I do remember seeing that depending on how the institution defines it, you could significantly grow your first generation student population. And so some add in the first to earn a degree in the United States, or some include not just the biological parents, but the guardian of the student. And so there are a lot of nuances there.
I think of it as not whether or not you've had a support system who understands the language of college, I think, because even though I technically meet the definition of first gen, my older sister, who's actually 14 years older than me, did have a bachelor's degree. And so I wasn't unfamiliar with the language of college, and I had somebody I could go to and ask, even though I technically meet the definition of first gen. So when we think about first gen students at Ivy Tech, how many are there?
I will add in, I think the last numbers that I saw each campus, or at least most of the campuses across the state, we're at about 25%. And some of that's based off of the FAFSA information, so it may vary a little bit. But that kind of puts us on average with the national statistics of the percentage of first-gen students in college.
I will say for the TRIO program in Fort Wayne, considering we just rewrote our grants, we have more current data than we might otherwise have at the moment. And for our student body here in Fort Wayne, when we wrote the 2019-2020 grant, we came out at about 36% of the Fort Wayne student body, excluding dual credit, excluding courses only. So kind of the credential seeking group. I personally suspect that that's a lot higher because it's surprisingly our FAFSA filing rates, I would like to see them higher, quite frankly. So we can only pull institutional data based upon FAFSA filing, and therefore we're already reducing the number of students that we can make that assessment upon. And if the federal definition used in the FAFSA is different than the TRIO definition, it's a little bit of apples and oranges anyway. So our number based upon the FAFSA definition, FAFSA filers came out at 36% for Fort Wayne, but personal experience tells me it's much, much higher than that.
And certainly I think part of that challenge comes from those same nuances we were just talking about, right? Like sometimes I will talk to students and I will find out in that conversation that they're first gen, but they have never indicated that on the FAFSA, or they've never indicated that in any other place with the institution because they don't understand what the term means either when they run across it.
So when we think about our first generation students, why is it important to recognize them? Why is that significant and critical for us as members of the college?
I'm going to go back to a little history lesson, and the norms of higher education today are centered around the systems that were created by and for men and continuing generation college students. And so it's important to recognize all of the people that don't fit into that category so that we can start to interrupt the social reproduction of those norms. And so in thinking about first generation specifically, recognizing the first generation student population is the first step to acknowledging that maybe we might need to change some of our practices and policies that are occurring at Ivy Tech and across higher education.
So glad you brought that up, Rachel. That's a really great point. And I think it also situates the importance of focusing on first gen and align it with the community college mission. We're the front door here in Indiana, or I feel should be the front door for many students. And if the front door is not recognizing the need to be as inclusive as possible, we have a problem.
Well, and certainly, from a student standpoint, is that sometimes just being able to, it's as much as we don't want to label people, right? Like for them to be able to say, oh, yes, and recognize themselves in first gen and be able to say, yes, that's maybe why I don't feel like I fit in or I understand as much as the other people, the other students that I see, and helping them recognize that is a thing, that being first gen is a thing. And we understand that that's going to come with some different challenges, but we're here to help. And we are here to offer those resources that we can to help support them.
Yeah, I would say as a student that being a first gen student, I don't really have, resources that other students would have. I feel like the other students that had parents or guardians that previously went to college have more of a person to hold their hand in the whole situation. And being that I don't have that, I know that I can feel a little lost sometimes because not always do you have all the answers from your advisors, depending in a normal situation. With TRIO, you get more time with your advisors, you have more experience in that order. Whether just having a regular school advisor and you only have 30 minutes, you got to set up scheduled meetings that take forever to happen and things like that. Being first gen, sometimes, like I said, you feel a little lost because you don't have that extra supporting hand. Manny,
I'd like to dig into that a little bit more. That was such a great answer. And I very much know that advising is an area where we know we need better support and more resources. What are some other areas that you specifically have felt challenged by as you've tried to navigate Ivy Tech?
To be honest, I consider myself to be pretty headstrong and pretty determined. So I kind of take the best of situations and make it work. So I really haven't had that much of a challenge too much because I want it. Like, I want to be in college. I love the environment, and I put myself in situations to make myself fit in. But I can see as other students who don't have that much motivation that it could be a struggle to get into those kind of situations because, like I said, you can get a little lost when you don't have that parent at home saying, hey, you should be doing this. Hey, when I went to college, I did this, or things like that. Just that little bit of support could go a long way. And for me, like I said, I haven't really had that much of an issue because I do have, with all the programs I'm in, I have a lot of support, and I put myself in situations where I have to work harder or fit into that mold. But for other students, I try to help them when I see it. When I see students who are not getting everything out of their experience, where they could push themselves a little bit more, I want to help them, and I try to get them in the situations that could help them have a better experience in college, because I think college is more than just about learning. It's about experiencing life. It's a whole thing, and I love it. I love school.
College is about more than learning is the title of this episode, Manny. Good job.
I think what you said, Manny, though, is another good reason to celebrate first-gen students, just so that we can start to recognize other students and even other faculty and staff on campus who can serve as those good resources for students who are first-gen and might not feel, I can't remember the word you used to describe yourself, but who might not feel like they have the confidence to seek out the resources that they need.
I got another good example of that, especially if you're in a 2-year community college. So right now I'm in the situation of I'm trying to go to a 4-year. I'm getting ready to transfer for next year. I'm completely lost. I feel like if I had parents or if I wasn't a first gen, I'd have more, resources and stuff. But right now I just have to talk to my advisors and talk to faculty. And it's hard being a first gen student when I'm just like, I need someone to hold my hand.
There's a lot of times where, especially for first gen students, I think, and not having that same social capital, you may not even know what kinds of questions to ask. You don't know what you don't know yet. Whereas, a continuing gen student may already have, the information on what they need to be asking for admissions visits or what they need to look at when they're determining where to transfer. But that's not something that may come as naturally. But developing those connections and building that social capital, whether it's getting involved in a TRIO program or honors or a work study job or student government, all of those connections to help to build that support system for first gen students.
How does, and Rachel, you touched on this a little bit, but I want to dig more deeply into this concept. How does first generation status impact equity, diversity, and belonging?
If I can chime in real quick, that's goal 8, 7, 8. I was so glad to see that added, and so glad that the word belonging in particular was in there as well. I think that sense of belonging is it's tied in the retention literature to what keeps students in school, deeply tied within the retention literature. So I was really pleased to see goal 8 and really pleased to see it include the word belonging in particular.
When the academy opens up to bring in other groups, to welcome other groups, it often works to try to fit that group into the academy. And in my research, so I looked at first generation women faculty. So I talked to faculty, but they were also first generation students. And that was one of the common themes, is a sense of belonging in the academy. And the first gen faculty talked about not feeling as if they belonged when they were students, but also not feeling as if they belonged in their faculty roles as well. And so I think that for us to think about any population that's not the majority population, but in this case, first generation students, we really need to start asking ourselves, like, what are they bringing to the campus? What can we celebrate about them? What are their assets? So that creates a sense of belonging, rather than asking, how can we fit them into the model that we already have?
I think imposter syndrome has to play a role in that as well. I just think about my own role here at the college, and some mornings I wake up and I go, I'm just this rural kid from middle class Indiana, lower middle class Indiana. How in the world am I provost at one of the largest community colleges in the country? How in the world does that work? And I think a lot of us are just trying to pretend our ways into the roles that we have, and trying to do the very best that we can. And Manny, I go back to thinking about that, how you cultivate that sense of grit and perseverance, and just the ability to say, look, I'm going to do this. I don't care what the world says that I can and can't do. I'm going to do this. And that's hard when the world continues to tell you over and over again that you can't, or you don't fit, or you're not right, or all of those sorts of things. So definitely got to continue our diversity, equity, and belonging work.
And I definitely think, to build on that a little bit, is helping people develop that sense of grit, not only while they're here, but that carries on, because Manny's talking about transferring. Mm-hmm. And I'm a first gen student, and I went to community college, and I finally felt like I knew what I was doing there. And then I transferred to my 4-year school, and it was all new again, and I had no idea what was going on. And then I finally figured out what I was doing there. And then I went to grad school, and I was like, what's happening now? And then I became a new professional and went, okay, I have no idea what's happening. And so I think is trying to help students develop that sense of grit, but that it carries on. It's not just helping them at Ivy Tech, but helping them in all of their next steps, whatever that might be.
That was wonderful. Yes, I agree with that 100%, because I'm definitely at the point where, like, I got Ivy Tech down. Okay, I know what I'm doing, but next year, I'm going to be starting from scratch, and I have no idea what's going to be going on. And then, like you said, 2 years later, after, I just feel like, okay, I got my 4-year good. I'm a senior. Things are rolling, And then you go to grad school, and it's boom, back to the bottom and lost again. And it's just going to continue. But it's about building that character to persevere through it and be able to start over and build up to that high point again, over and over and over. And eventually in your career, you're going to be lost when you start your career, as a professional, but then eventually you're going to reach that point where you got this, you know what you're doing, but it all starts from somewhere. And that's what people got to know, is that you got to start somewhere and just build a strong foundation and go from there.
So if I can give a TRIO plug here for a bit, look for TRIO programs at your potential next stopping point. Really, here at Ivy Tech, we have 4 campuses with student support services programs, but TRIO is meant to be a continuum of services for first gen. You have Upward Bound and Talent Search in the middle school, high school pipeline, and there are 2 of those programs at Ivy Tech, one Upward Bound and one Talent Search. But then you have McNair Scholars, which is a graduate level program. I have to look up to see what we currently have here in Indiana, but it's not always possible to kind of find that pipeline. But I think 50 years ago, when TRIO programs were created, somebody knew what they were doing and trying to set up this pipeline approach for these programs. So it's not always possible to find that at your next step, and perhaps shouldn't be the determining factor of your next step, but to look for those resources as well. You have the skills to get there, I can already tell.
Definitely. Well, and Manny, I think about you're in the honors program as well, and a part of the NINA Scholars. And so taking Beth's advice that even if it isn't TRIO for a student who might be listening, you have found lots of ways to belong at Ivy Tech and to connect yourself to the institution. And I think that is such an important skill for first generation students. And we're going to transition here to build our conversation out around the first generation faculty and professional, which I think is Danny and Rachel and I, as first gen, we've already disclosed that as part of our conversation. We knew we had to do that. We had to find a way to belong at our new workplace too. So let's broaden our conversation out to that. What does it mean to be a first generation faculty or professional? And why is it significant that we do recognize our first generation professionals?
Like what Danny said about having to figure it out again when she started her first professional role. And I'll say I feel that every role that I start at the college and before Ivy Tech, I think there are a lot of assumptions that everybody knows what the culture is or how to be. And I'll use my parents as an example. Neither of my parents graduated from high school, and my father worked in a warehouse and now he does construction, and my mother worked as a bartender. They just speak their mind. That was the culture of their trade. They would just speak their mind, and they would be loud and often funny. And those strategies don't always work in the meetings that I'm in. And, if I say something very loud or try to make a lighthearted joke, it doesn't go over very well all the time. And so just what it means to be a professional, I don't even know how to begin to start talking about all of the different ways that. And there are other things having to sign up for a retirement account and pick my health insurance. It was like being a student all over again, Danny. I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah, I have a set of young professionals in my life, not necessarily all at Ivy Tech, but they're people that I try to have those conversations with. And I say, hey, you're starting your first professional job. One of your first meetings is going to be about benefits, and they're going to ask you to sign a lot of papers, and you should definitely keep those papers. And if you need somebody to talk to about that, I don't know everything, but I'm happy to talk through those with you from my experience, right? Because those are the things that I didn't get from my mother, who is also a bartender, and my father, who also does construction. So apparently, Rachel, we're following the same path here along the way.
Yes.
But just trying to have some of those conversations. It took me a while because I had some of that imposter syndrome, and I didn't want people to think I didn't belong. But now I'm pretty open about talking about how I got here and the challenges that brought, because I want other people to be able to see that and see that it's okay to struggle a little bit, to see that there are other people who have forged that path and are willing to help you, whether it's a hand up or a conversation or whatever that might look like.
If I can throw in a question, did anybody who's first generation get pushback from their family? What are you studying? What are you doing? How far are you going? You're doing another degree? What? My automotive mechanic father why are you studying psychology for your, what is that? What are you going to do with that? Those were some of the questions I got heading into college myself. Not ill-intended, but just didn't quite understand. So I know for some students, sometimes they get not just lack of support or lack of understanding, but sometimes they're really breaking some family norms by continuing to pursue and move through education. And sometimes that taxes family relationships behind the student. I don't know if that was anyone else's experience or if anyone can relate to that.
And that could even go further than just family. That could do your whole environment, like your friends and family. It doesn't have to particularly be just the family portion, because I know being in a friend group that doesn't really have any college background, all my friends are servers or bartenders or work in a warehouse or something like that. And they go, you're studying physics? What are you going to do with that? Well, honestly, this is what I want to do. I don't exactly know what I'm going to do with it, but that's what I want to do. So I'm going. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be always just the parents. It could be your whole environment, your friend group, things like that.
It does create interesting just divisions, and those divisions don't go away. I look at, my nieces and nephews now are adults, and all of them went to college, yet their parents, except for my sister, my two brothers, didn't go to college. And it does create some interesting lifelong canyons that you can't close the gap once you open it. And so you've got to continue to commit to your family in ways that work for you all, but then realize that there are big differences then that do come out of being a college student and a college graduate. And that, I think, Beth, to your question, you're always going to deal with that once the gap is opened. It's not bad. It's just something to be aware of. So we're going to celebrate first generation professionals and students starting November 9th. And why do we celebrate honor around that time of year? What's the significance of the time of year?
November 8th is when we recognize the signing of the 1965 Higher Education Act, which sort of was the first stepping stone to having a focus on first-gen programs through our series of TRIO programs. Beth mentioned earlier some of the programs that folks can join as early as middle school, and then the student support services and McNair scholars that exist at the college level. All of those kind of came out of originally the 1965 Higher Education Act. So that's why we're celebrating first-gen celebrations the week of.
So how are your campuses celebrating? Josh, we'll start with Indianapolis, and then we'll go to Danny and then to Beth. So Josh, start with you.
Sure. So in Indianapolis, this is at least the second year of really focused first-gen celebration events that we've done. So we're looking forward to having a few programs throughout the week. Of course, while we're all still dealing with pandemic in 2020, much of what we're doing is going to be virtual. So the Saturday beforehand, we're planning a movie that is going to be first-gen specific. Still trying to figure out the movie, but it's going to have some tie to College 101, breaking stereotypes, dispelling myths. And it should be a fun, family-friendly event. And then
it's a drive-in too, right?
It is a drive-in.
Yeah, it's a drive-in movie.
Fun.
So we can socially distance.
On Tuesday, November 10th, we are planning a virtual panel of first-gen students, staff, and faculty to share a little bit about their experiences and what they found beneficial in terms of support they received while students, as well as best practices for supporting first-gen students and their needs and helping celebrate and recognize their achievements as well. That Thursday, we are going to be hosting a professionalism event for students to learn about what it means to be professional and helping hopefully navigate some of those challenges or milestones in their professional careers. And then Friday, we're going to be holding a professional symposium for faculty and staff and students, if they'd like to join, to share a little bit about some of their research that they've done on first-gen students or share best practices in terms of support they receive as well.
Danny, what about Kokomo?
So in Kokomo, one of the big things that we're doing is we're going to do a student success panel, which is something that we've done in the past. And so we're going to do it with kind of a first-gen twist on it. And we always have some good faculty partners with that who also bring their classes so that we can focus not only on the first gens, but also just some general success things for all of our students. We have a lot of plans for some passive things where with some messaging and a lot of pieces like that are going to go out throughout the week as ways to recognize faculty and staff as well as students who are first gen or who support first gen and want to be like, yay, celebrate you because you're awesome. So we're doing a lot of stuff like that. But I am also a part of the statewide team that is helping provide some resources for all of the student life directors. And all of our student life directors around the state are planning events on all of your campuses. So I would encourage you, if you want to get involved or you want to participate in any way, I would really encourage you to do that. They have some really exciting events planned. They're doing a lot of resource fairs. They're doing a lot of pieces on helping students really connect with scholarships because we know that funding can sometimes be a challenge. And for our first-gen students, and sometimes they don't even realize all of the financial aid pieces that are available to them and those resources. And so being able to share a lot of that, we are also working with statewide marketing to do some videos and have some of our first gen faculty and staff share some videos that'll be able to share out through social media. And there will be a first gen landing page. So if you want to see all of those videos in one place from around the state, we will have that available too on November 9th.
And you'll get me the URL for that, and we'll make sure we put it in the show notes.
Will do.
Perfect. And Beth, Fort Wayne?
Yes, this will be our third or fourth year running with some first gen programming. We have a great partnership with our Office of Student Life. We have a student org called the TRIO Leadership Council, which puts a group of students really involved in some of this planning too. So being fully virtual here in Fort Wayne, it was a challenge to kind of figure out how to pivot, because in the past we've done some chalk walks, we've done some posters, we did some highlighting of employee stories and put posters up around buildings, and have done some live celebrations with panelists, and we even one year got everyone t-shirts and had a little celebration at Ivy Tech, and then walked across the street to PFW to visit their TRIO program, and kind of like literally enacting that transfer pathway and that handoff for some of our students. So, 2020 requires lots of creativity and flexibility. And I was excited to hear that Student Life as a statewide entity was really going to run with some things on behalf of every campus. I think that's a wonderful effort. So the plans this year are to participate in the statewide efforts, so we can have some uniformity across the statewide system. But we do hope to do some virtual panels here in Fort Wayne with students, current students, program alumni. We have 15 years of program alumni, and it's fun to get them to come back and speak. And then also involving employees, faculty and staff that are first gen and telling their stories. So we hope to do some virtual programming, to have some paneling. We have an idea around an essay contest that we hope to get launched. And then, maybe there'll be a statewide logo, but maybe having something that's specific to Fort Wayne, kind of like a placard that people can put outside their office, or a digital badge, or something of that nature that ties into some of the statewide creativity as well. So those are some of the plans for Fort Wayne. And one thing I would also add with regard to the whole first gen theme is, at least here in Fort Wayne, it's seemed very positive and very inclusive. And we've made it a theme in our programming to also honor continuing gen students, and to encourage them that you may not be first generation, but to be part of that continuing generation journey is just as important, because otherwise your kids are going to be first gen if you don't finish college yourself. So I've liked the inclusivity of the idea of celebrating first gen, but then also giving some credence and some shout outs and some credit to kind of the continuing generation story, because that is just as important, especially to accomplishing some of our big picture goals in the state of Indiana with college attainment rates.
That's such a great point, Beth. If you break this cycle, you go right back into it. So this is a cycle we've got to keep going on forward to make sure that we keep students in that status. That's a very good point. Are there resources or places people can go to learn more about first gen celebration and other ideas from other organizations?
Some of NASPA's resources are perhaps worth mentioning. NASPA, I forget what it stands for. National
Association of Student Personnel Administrators?
Technically, it doesn't stand for anything anymore, like KFC doesn't stand for anything.
Oh, that's right, because they merged with the other one.
Yeah.
But NASPA and the Council for Opportunity and Education have some just great resources on their websites where there's ideas. And that, I know for us, has been a really great resource. So that, I think, could be part of a call to action to just put that out there. So if other campuses want to pick something up, they can go and scoop up a couple of ideas.
How does Ivy Tech and how do colleges in general need to change to continue to better serve first generation college students?
I think one of my personal action items for myself is to start reframing the conversation from college ready to student ready. So rather than talking about our students as like ready for college or being a good college student. I'm doing air quotes, even though nobody can see that. We really need to think, institutions really need to think about how, like, are we ready for the students in front of us? And so that's kind of my personal call to action for myself and for my team, that I'm always trying to reframe that conversation.
Can we get like a clap track that comes in when you say that? That's my request.
I was just going to say, Rachel, that goes back to the system was not originally designed for fill in the blank. So if we change our thought process to change the system rather than change our expectations for the student, that's going to hopefully lead to a much better outcome for everybody.
Yeah, for all students.
And Rachel, we're doing an enrollment systems review right now as a part of Project Hoosier Recruit. And what I have named it in my notes is becoming a student-ready college, because that is really the journey we have to be on. So I love that you said it. It makes me so happy. So in addition to Rachel's call to action that she's given you, we end every episode with a call to action, which is to check out some of the resources you've heard about in this episode, and to make sure you involve yourself in the first generation activities that are happening the week of November 9th through the 13th. There are going to be lots of opportunities. And while we really all wish we could be together in person without having to socially distance, because we can't, it means that you can participate in activities from many of our campuses, and you'll be able to see the wealth of those. We'll do everything we can to make sure that all of those are in our show notes, as well as in the Thursday email, so that you can check those out. So please make sure that you do that and watch for more information on these celebrations here at Ivy Tech. Thanks again for joining this episode of Our College, Your Voices. I want to thank my guests today, Josh Van Bibber, Rachel Karcz, Danny McQuaid, Manny Martinez, and Beth Clemens. Thanks again to all of you. This was a really fun conversation. I'm your host, Kara Monroe. You can connect with me on Twitter at KNM Tweets. Today's episode is produced by Josh Van Bibber. Josh, thanks again for all of your work to pull this together. You can reach us by email at ourcollegeyourvoices@ivytech.edu. Leave us a voicemail at 317-572-5049. I'll leave you a specific call to action for that one. I would love to hear your first-gen college student story. So if you have a first-gen story, call in, leave that, and we might use those in a future episode. If you're an Ivy Tech faculty or staff member, you can join our Microsoft Teams listener community. I send out information on how to do that every Thursday. Our website is ivytech.edu/podcast. Thanks to the amazing marketing team for their help in maintaining that. Production assistance for this and every episode provided by Becky Campbell and Sarah Ferguson, and our podcast concept is by Matthew Pittman. Theme music and post-production services provided by the amazing Jen Eads at the Brassy Broadcasting Company, and we will talk to you next time on Our College, Your Voices.